Captain Elara Miles stood at the edge of the observation deck, her eyes fixed on the sprawling view of the galaxy beyond. The stars sparkled like distant diamonds, yet the quiet hum of the ship reminded her that the mission was far from over. The Varnuk Empire had long ruled the stars, proud of their claim as the first intelligent race to conquer space. For thousands of years, they had shaped the galaxy, with their vast fleets and towering cities on dozens of planets. Yet, despite their power, the Varnuk had never encountered a force quite like humanity. As the captain of the human exploratory vessel, Nova's Horizon, Elara had been sent to a forgotten corner of the galaxy, a star system said to have once been home to an ancient, long-extinct race. It was nothing more than a myth, an ancient story passed down among the stars, but the Galactic Council had ordered her to investigate. To many, it seemed like a simple mission to verify the past. But Elara couldn't shake the feeling that something far more significant lay ahead. The Galactic Council had been at peace for over 10 millennia, and most races had forgotten the bitter conflicts of the past. The Varnuk Empire, in particular, held on to their story of being the first spacefaring race, an empire that had forged the path for the galaxy's advancement. The humans, by comparison, were seen as a young species, full of potential but still struggling to make their mark. Elara was determined to change that perception. If humanity could prove their worth, they might finally gain a place among the galaxy's powers. "Captain, we've arrived at the system," her communications officer, Lieutenant Iden, announced. His voice crackled through the intercom. "We've pinpointed the coordinates of the ruins. They're on the third moon of the gas giant, as expected." "Good," Elara replied, turning away from the window. "Prepare the landing team. We're going in." Minutes later, Elara and her team were suited up and ready to land on the moon. The surface below appeared desolate, lifeless, frozen, and bathed in the dim light of the distant sun. The ruins were hidden beneath a thick layer of ice and rock, far from any prying eyes. No one had set foot on this moon for centuries, perhaps longer. As the ship descended, Elara could see the faint outlines of ancient structures rising through the ice. The Varnuk had dismissed these as natural formations, but Elara's instincts told her otherwise. There was something about the design that didn't match any known alien architecture. The ruins were symmetrical, with sharp edges and intricately carved symbols. These weren't the works of a primitive species. They spoke of an advanced civilization, one with knowledge far beyond anything the galaxy had seen. The Nova's Horizon touched down gently, its landing thrusters kicking up plumes of dust. Elara's boots crunched on the icy surface as she stepped onto the ground, followed by her team. The cold air bit into her skin, but the excitement of discovery kept her focused. She moved toward the ruins, her heart pounding in her chest. The first structure they encountered was a massive doorway, carved into the side of a mountain. The surface was covered in strange symbols, none of which matched anything in the Varnuk database. Elara carefully examined them, her mind racing. These symbols seemed to be some sort of writing, but there was no record of this language in any known archives. The door itself was made of an alloy unlike any material the humans had encountered. It shimmered in the dim light, as if the door itself was alive. "Captain, we're going to need more time to analyze this," said Dr. Lin, the ship's archaeologist, as he carefully scanned the symbols with his equipment. "This looks like it could be centuries old, or even older." Elara nodded. "Do what you need to. We'll wait." Hours passed as the team worked. The sun set on the horizon, casting the moon in long shadows. Just as the last of the team's energy began to wane, a soft hum emanated from the door. A light flickered to life, tracing the symbols in a glowing blue outline. It was as though the door itself had awakened after eons of slumber. Elara's heart raced. "It's opening," she whispered. With a slow, deliberate motion, the door began to slide open, revealing a dark chamber beyond. Elara and her team stepped inside, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The walls of the chamber were covered in more symbols. This time, they were larger and more intricate, as though telling a story. The air inside was stale, untouched for millennia. But there was something unsettling about the room. It felt like they were not alone. "Captain, look at this," Dr. Lin called from across the room. He was standing in front of a large stone pedestal upon which rested a strange device. It appeared to be some sort of holographic projector, but it was unlike any technology the humans had encountered before. The device pulsed with a faint light, and as Ilara approached, it flickered to life. A hologram appeared in the center of the room, depicting a scene from the past. It showed an ancient humanoid race, similar to humans, standing on the surface of a distant planet. They were surrounded by strange machinery, working together to build something monumental. The message was clear. This race, whoever they were, had mastered space long before the Varnak had ever set foot on the stars. "These are humans," Ilara muttered under her breath. "But how?" The hologram shifted, showing a vast star map. The stars were connected by glowing lines, marking out a network of colonies spread across the galaxy. It was an empire, an ancient empire, more advanced than any known today. But there was something more disturbing. The final scene showed the empire collapsing, its cities falling into ruins. The last image was a warning. "The silence will come. We must leave." The hologram flickered and then shut down, leaving the room in total darkness once more. Ilara's mind raced. She had discovered something that would change everything. The Varnak had lied. Humans weren't newcomers to the stars. They had once ruled them. As Ilara stood there, stunned by the enormity of the discovery, she realized that the galaxy would never be the same again. The truth was out there, hidden for millennia. And now it was in her hands. And if the Varnak discovered what she had found, they would stop at nothing to destroy it. Ilara knew one thing for sure: the fight for the future had just begun. The days that followed the discovery on the third moon were filled with questions that Ilara Miles had no answers to. The ancient ruins they had uncovered were just the beginning. What they had found beneath the layers of ice and stone was not just a broken history, but a story far darker and more significant than they had imagined. As the Nova's horizon remained parked on the moon's surface, the human crew worked tirelessly to examine the device and the star map. Every moment felt like they were racing against time. Ilara couldn't stop thinking about the final image from the hologram. The warning. "The silence will come. We must leave." The words echoed in her mind. Who had left the message, and why? The question burned, but even more pressing was the device itself. It seemed to hum with energy, something beyond their current understanding. The ancient machine was far too advanced for any known species to have built, and yet it was clearly human in origin. Ilara couldn't shake the feeling that what they were dealing with was far beyond any simple archaeological find. Captain Ilara knew that she needed to gather more data, so she called for a meeting in the ship's briefing room. The crew sat around the large table, their faces tired but alert. The ship's lead engineer, Lieutenant Davis, was the first to speak. "It's like nothing I've ever seen before," Davis said, rubbing his tired eyes. "The energy signatures coming from the device don't match anything in the database. It's as if the technology was designed to be hidden, or even forgotten." Dr. Lin, the ship's archaeologist, nodded thoughtfully. "The symbols in the ruins match no known language. I've tried every translation algorithm I can find, but they don't correspond to anything we've ever encountered. This civilization, it was beyond us in ways we can't even imagine." Ilara listened quietly, her mind racing. She glanced at the star map again, where each point seemed to mark a forgotten colony. The map was incomplete, the paths between the stars broken by gaps. What had happened to these ancient people? And why had they disappeared without a trace? As they discussed possible theories, Ilara's thoughts drifted back to the message. She had tried to dismiss it as a warning from a long-dead civilization, but something about it bothered her, especially the way the message had been encoded, as if the Solari Dominion, the ancient race, knew that someone would find it eventually. The question was, who? Why had they believed their warning would matter so long after their fall? Ilara made a decision. They needed to find more of these ruins. The first discovery had been accidental, but if there was more to uncover, they had to find it. The map, though incomplete, had a few coordinates that might lead them to another site. As the meeting ended, Ilara made her way to the command deck, where Lieutenant Iden was already running through the preparations for the next phase of the mission. "Captain, we've analyzed the data you sent back to Earth," Iden said, turning to her as she entered. "There's something strange happening. Earth Command has ordered us to halt all further exploration of the ruins. They've classified the information as highly sensitive." Ilara's brow furrowed. "Why? We have a breakthrough here, Aiden. Something that could change everything. Why would they stop us?" Aiden shook his head. "I don't know, Captain. But Earth Command has sent a directive. We're to return immediately. No more investigating. No more transmissions." Ilara's heart sank. She had a sinking feeling that this wasn't about protocol. Someone didn't want them to continue, and the thought made her skin crawl. The message, the technology. It was too significant, too important, to be dismissed so easily. They couldn't just let it go. "We're not leaving yet," she said, her voice firm. "We're going to follow the map. Whatever this is, we can't let anyone stop us now." Aiden looked at her, surprised, but nodded. "Understood, Captain." The next few hours were tense. Ilara's orders were clear. They would go to the next set of coordinates. It was a risky move, especially given Earth Command's instructions. But Ilara couldn't back down. If humanity was truly connected to these ancient ruins, they had to know the full truth. No one, not even Earth Command, had the right to silence that kind of discovery. As they made their way toward the next destination, the crew's nerves were stretched thin. No one spoke much during the journey, each person lost in their own thoughts. What were they walking into? And why did it feel as though something was watching them, following their every move? When they reached the second moon, the landscape was eerily similar to the first. It was a barren, frozen world with icy mountains and vast plains of snow. The ruins were buried beneath layers of ice, but Ilara could make out the outlines of structures peeking through the frost. The landing was smooth, but as Ilara and her team stepped out onto the icy surface, an unsettling feeling washed over them. The air was still, too still. It was as though the planet itself was holding its breath. They began their search, following the star map's coordinates, which led them deep into a mountain range. Hours passed, and the silence grew heavier. The wind picked up, and the crew's movements became more cautious. There was something strange about this place, something that didn't feel right. Then, just as they were about to give up, Dr. Lin's voice broke through the stillness. "Captain, over here." Ilara rushed to his side, her heart pounding in her chest. Dr. Lin was standing before a massive structure, something unlike the ruins they had found before. This one wasn't carved from stone. It was metallic, sleek, and far more advanced. There were no signs of decay, no wear from the passage of time. It looked as if it had just been built, yet the structure was ancient, millennia old, at least. "Ilara, this is beyond anything we've seen," Lin said, his voice trembling with excitement. "This is Solari technology." The realization hit Ilara like a punch to the gut. They weren't just uncovering ruins. They were discovering a hidden piece of humanity's lost empire. But as they carefully examined the structure, something even more shocking occurred. A low hum filled the air. The metallic surface of the structure began to glow faintly. Ilara stepped back. It's still active." Before anyone could react, the ground beneath them trembled. A low rumble echoed across the frozen surface, and then, without warning, the structure's doors slowly began to open. They were no longer alone. The doors of the ancient structure creaked, open with a sound that sent a shiver down Ilara's spine. The dim light from the setting sun barely reached the surface of the icy moon, casting long shadows that made everything feel more ominous. The Nova's Horizon crew had only just begun to understand the gravity of their discovery, but the sudden shift in the environment, the low hum of machinery coming to life, told them they were about to uncover something far beyond their wildest imaginations, something that had been hidden for millennia, waiting to be found. Ilara hesitated for a moment, her breath fogging in the cold air. The structure's metallic doors slowly parted, revealing a large chamber inside. It was like stepping into a world that had been frozen in time. The walls were smooth, gleaming with a strange light that flickered in response to their presence. Strange symbols, the same ones they had found on the previous ruins, covered the walls. But there was something different about them here. These symbols moved, shifting slowly, as if they were alive. This is unbelievable," Dr. Lin whispered, his voice filled with awe as he approached the wall. "These aren't just carvings. They're interactive. I think they're reacting to us." Ilara stepped forward, feeling a rush of excitement. The symbols seemed to be forming a pattern in real time, shifting and changing with each movement they made. She glanced back at her team. There was a mix of awe and fear on their faces. They knew they were standing on the brink of history, of rewriting everything they thought they knew about the galaxy. But even as the wonder of the discovery settled in, a deeper sense of unease gnawed at the edges of Ilara's thoughts. They were not alone in this place. Whoever had built this structure, whatever had once lived here, had left a warning, and they had only scratched the surface. "We need to figure out how to activate the main console," Lieutenant Davis said, his voice steady but carrying a hint of nervous energy. "This place is too quiet. It's like the calm before a storm." Dr. Lin nodded. "There's something about the technology here that doesn't make sense. It's far more advanced than anything we've ever encountered. We need to understand it if we're going to learn more." They spread out, inspecting the room. At the far end of the chamber, Ilara saw what appeared to be a raised platform, bathed in an eerie blue light. The air was thick with a low-frequency hum, and as Ilara approached the platform, she saw that it was surrounded by intricate, glowing markings embedded in the floor. Her pulse quickened as she realized the structure was a control center, a command center that had been dormant for centuries, but was now beginning to stir. A chill ran down her spine as she placed her hand on the glowing surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, without warning, the room seemed to come alive. The symbols on the walls moved faster, spiraling into a vortex of light that consumed everything in its path. The platform in front of her flickered to life, revealing a holographic display that projected a star map into the center of the room. Ilara's heart skipped a beat as she saw the galaxy laid out before her, only it wasn't the galaxy as she knew it. The map showed thousands of star systems, many of which were not on any current maps, and connected by glowing lines that pulsed like veins, showing a network far older than any known civilization. "Captain, look at this," Dr. Lin said, his voice shaking as he approached her. He was staring at a section of the map that had drawn Ilara's attention as well. It showed a large cluster of stars marked by a bold symbol, a symbol that looked suspiciously human. Ilara's eyes widened. This can't be right. These are the systems from the ancient map we found earlier. But this, she trailed off, unable to process what she was seeing. This part of the map, it's telling a story, a history we never knew. The hologram zoomed in on one particular star system. The surrounding stars had lines connecting them to a central star, and the symbol marked it as the heart of an empire. This empire, as the map showed, spanned across the galaxy, older than any known race, predating even the Varnuk Empire. The hologram shifted, showing a history of growth and expansion. It was a brilliant empire that had once controlled vast regions of space, thriving for millennia. But then there was a sudden shift, a collapse. "This isn't just history," Lieutenant Iden said quietly, his voice filled with dread. "This is humanity's true past. The Varnuk, their claims of being the first to conquer space, they were lies. We were here first. Ilara's mind raced. The truth was undeniable now. Humanity had not been the young species struggling to find its place in the galaxy. No, humanity had once ruled it. And now, a forgotten chapter of history was being rewritten before their very eyes. But the history wasn't just about glory, it was about a warning. The galaxy had been shattered by some catastrophic event, the reasons for which were still unclear. It was clear that the ancient humans had seen the end coming, the symbols on the walls. These weren't just records, they were messages left for those who would find them, urging them to learn from the past. "This is bigger than we thought," Ilara said, her voice barely above a whisper. The Varnok didn't just hide the truth, they erased it. And now we're uncovering something they never wanted us to know. As Ilara continued to study the holographic map, something strange happened. The center of the map began to pulse with a bright light, and a new symbol appeared, a symbol she recognized. It was the same one that had been present on the ruined walls they had first discovered. The symbol had once been just a piece of a forgotten history, but now it seemed to be alive, as if calling to them. "Captain," Dr. Lin said, his voice tense, "I think we've triggered something. The hologram. It's trying to show us something. Something urgent." Suddenly, the map zoomed in on a system far beyond the stars they had already explored. It was dark, devoid of any stars, and at its center, a black hole pulsed ominously. The stars around it seemed to be vanishing, their light swallowed by the darkness. The entire galaxy appeared to be slowly gravitating toward this dark region. A moment of silence followed, the crew staring at the chilling image. This isn't just history," Aiden said, voice barely audible. "This is a warning. The galaxy is heading toward something catastrophic." The hologram shifted again, revealing a hidden section of the map, a forbidden region that had been erased from all records. Ilara's stomach dropped as she realized the truth. The darkness at the center of the map wasn't just a natural phenomenon. It was the end of everything, the end of the human empire, the end of all the galaxy's known civilizations. And it was coming again. Ilara turned to face her crew. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide with shock and disbelief. "We have to stop this," she said, her voice firm, despite the fear that gripped her heart. "We can't let the past repeat itself. We have to understand what happened before it's too late." The silence in the room was deafening. They had uncovered the forbidden history of humanity, but now they were faced with an even darker truth. The same destruction that had once fallen upon their ancestors was about to return, and it was up to them to stop it. The horizon drifted slowly through the empty space, its engines humming quietly in the vast silence of the galaxy. Ilara stood at the observation window, her gaze fixed on the stars outside. The past few weeks had been nothing but chaos. Ever since they discovered the ancient ruins and the long-lost map that revealed humanity's forgotten empire, their world had changed. It wasn't just a relic of history they'd uncovered. It was a warning. And now, as they drifted deeper into unknown space, the air aboard the ship was thick with anticipation and fear. "Captain, you need to see this." Lieutenant Aiden's voice crackled through the comms. His tone was serious, and it made Ilara's stomach tighten. She turned swiftly and walked towards the control room. Inside, Dr. Lin was staring intently at the large holographic display. He was pointing at a new section of the map, one they hadn't seen before. "Look at this," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "There's a hidden planet here, just outside the reach of known space. It doesn't appear on any records, and it's not supposed to be here." Ilara leaned closer, her breath catching as she examined the coordinates. The planet was located near the dark region they'd seen earlier, the area on the map that was surrounded by empty space, where stars seemed to vanish into a black void. It was the same place the ancient humans had warned about, the place where all light disappeared. "What is it?" Ilara asked, her voice steady despite the unease rising in her chest. Dr. Lin's fingers hovered over the hologram. "I don't know. It shouldn't exist, but there's a signal coming from it. An ancient signal. It's faint, but it's real. The room fell silent. Aiden shifted uncomfortably. That signal. It's almost like it's calling to us. What if it's a trap? Ilara considered his words carefully. The map had shown them the danger, the impending darkness that had once destroyed humanity's empire. Was this new signal a sign that whatever destroyed the ancient civilization was returning? "Prepare the ship," Ilara said, her voice firm. "We're going to investigate. We can't ignore this." As the crew worked quickly to prepare for the journey, Ilara couldn't shake the feeling that they were being drawn into something they weren't ready for. The unknown planet had appeared too suddenly, too conveniently. Was it truly just an ancient signal, or was something more sinister at work? Hours later, the horizon entered the unexplored system, the unknown planet looming large on the view screen. It was a world surrounded by a thick, eerie fog, as if it were trapped in an eternal twilight. The planet's surface was dark, covered in strange craters and deep ravines that seemed to stretch endlessly. "Do you see that?" Dr. Lin's voice broke the silence. "There's something moving on the surface. It's hard to make out, but it's definitely there." Ilara's heart raced as she looked at the screen. The planet's surface seemed to pulse, almost as if it were alive. It wasn't just the fog or the darkness that made it eerie. It was the sense that something was waiting, watching. "Scan for life forms," Ilara ordered, "and get us closer. We need to understand what we're dealing with." As they approached the planet's atmosphere, the strange energy from the planet began to interfere with their sensors, making everything flicker and distort. The closer they got, the stronger the interference became, until the entire ship seemed to shudder under the strain. Suddenly, the comms were filled with static, and then a voice, a faint, distorted whisper, came through. Ilara's blood ran cold. It sounded like the voice of a human, but the language was ancient, too old to recognize. "This is not safe," the voice echoed, growing fainter and fainter until it disappeared completely. Aiden turned to Ilara, his face pale. That wasn't just a random signal. That was someone trying to warn us. Ilara's mind raced as she tried to process what had just happened. The voice, it felt so familiar, as if it were reaching out from the past itself. Was it a message from the ancient humans who had once lived here, or was it something else entirely? The ship's systems began to fail. Lights flickered, and the hum of the engines started to distort. It was as if the planet itself was fighting them, pulling them in with invisible force. The crew struggled to maintain control as they descended into the atmosphere, and Ilara could see a massive structure, ancient and towering, emerging from the fog below. The structure was unlike anything they had ever seen before. It looked like a temple, but it was enormous, stretching high into the sky, its surface covered in strange runes that glowed faintly. Ilara's heart pounded in her chest. This was it, the place they had been searching for. But why did it feel so wrong? Why did it feel like they were trespassing in a world that had been sealed away for a reason? The ship's landing gear touched the surface with a soft thud, and the crew immediately suited up to explore. Ilara led the way, her boots crunching against the dry, rocky soil. As they approached the entrance of the massive structure, a strange coldness washed over them. The air felt heavy, as if the weight of centuries had settled here, waiting for something. Inside the temple, the air was thick with dust, and the walls were lined with ancient carvings, their meanings lost to time. Ilara traced her fingers over one of the symbols, and suddenly, the ground trembled. A low, deep rumble echoed through the chamber, and the walls began to shift, revealing the hidden door. "What was that?" Aiden asked, his voice tense. I think we've awakened something," Ilara whispered. Her voice was barely audible, but the crew heard it clearly. There was no turning back now. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a chamber deeper within the temple. In the center of the room was an altar, and upon it lay a dark crystal that pulsed with an eerie energy. The crystal seemed to be alive, its surface shifting like liquid, and a soft glow radiated from it, casting long shadows across the walls. "That crystal," Dr. Lin murmured, "it's not just a relic. It's connected to the planet. It's drawing power from it. And I think it's trying to communicate with us." Before Ilara could respond, a sudden explosion of light filled the chamber. The crystal flared with a blinding intensity, and the walls around them began to collapse. Panic set in as the crew scrambled to escape, but the path back to the entrance had sealed shut. They were trapped. Ilara felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The ancient return wasn't just a forgotten history, it was a warning. And now, the ancient power that had been dormant for so long was awakening, and it was hungry. The Nebula Voyager drifted silently through the deep space, its sleek, silver hull gleaming under the distant starlight. Inside the ship, the crew moved about with an unsettling calmness, as though they were waiting for something they couldn't fully comprehend. For weeks, they had been traveling to a distant, uncharted galaxy, following a trail of clues left behind by an ancient civilization. These clues, a series of cryptic symbols found on abandoned space stations and ruined planets, had promised to reveal the truth behind an age-old mystery, the origins of the galaxy itself. Captain Ryan stood at the front of the ship's observation deck, staring at the vastness of space before him, his mind swirling with questions. What were they about to uncover? And why did he feel that the truth they sought might not be what they expected? "Captain, you need to see this," came the voice of Lieutenant Ava, sharp and urgent over the comms. Her voice instantly pulled Ryan from his thoughts. He turned sharply and made his way toward the control room, where Ava stood beside a large holographic display, her face pale with concern. "What is it?" Ryan asked, his voice low, sensing something was wrong even before he saw the data she was showing. Ava looked at him, her eyes wide. "It's a signal, Captain. A signal from the planet we've been heading toward. It's not just any signal. It's ancient, incredibly old, but far too advanced for its time. The language it's using, it's human, Captain, but it's not from any human we know. This signal is older than anything we've encountered." Ryan's heart skipped a beat. The language of humans, but from a time long before humanity's first steps into space. That didn't make sense. "Are you saying it's from Earth?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper, as though he feared the answer. Ava nodded grimly. "Yes, and it's not just that. There's something else. It's as if the signal is waiting for us. It's calling us, Captain. And I don't think we're the first ones to hear it." The weight of her words hit Ryan like a punch. He'd heard stories of long-lost civilizations and forgotten technologies. But this was different. Something in his gut told him that the truth they were about to uncover would change everything they knew about the universe. The Nebula Voyager continued its journey toward the planet, a large, dark sphere hanging silently against the backdrop of distant stars. Its surface was a mixture of rocky craters and thick clouds that covered its surface, casting it in a constant state of twilight. As they approached, the ship's systems began to glitch and flicker, as though the planet itself was alive and pushing back against their intrusion. "Captain, we've entered the planet's orbit." Ava's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Sensors are picking up multiple energy sources below the surface. It's like the planet is shielding itself." Ryan gripped the armrest of his chair, staring at the holographic map. "Prepare to land. Let's see what we're dealing with." The ship descended toward the planet, the thick clouds parting to reveal a massive structure below. It wasn't like any city they had seen before. It looked ancient, yet somehow far more advanced than anything modern technology could build. Towering spires reached up from the ground, surrounded by strange, glowing symbols carved into the earth itself. Ryan's heart raced. This was it. The truth was waiting down there, and they were about to uncover it. The landing was rough, the ship shaking as it touched down on the planet's surface. Ryan's crew quickly suited up and prepared to disembark. As they stepped onto the ground, the air felt thick and heavy, as though it was infused with an energy that seemed to hum in the crew made their way toward the massive structure in the distance. The further they walked, the more oppressive the silence became, broken only by the crunch of their boots on the rocky ground. As they approached the entrance, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something they didn't fully understand, a place that had been abandoned for a reason. But they were already here. They had to continue. The massive doors of the structure opened with a loud groan, revealing a dark hallway beyond. Strange lights flickered to life as they stepped inside, casting long shadows along the walls. The deeper they went, the more intense the energy became. It felt almost as if the building itself was alive, watching them, waiting for them to unlock its secrets. They reached a large chamber at the heart of the structure. In the center stood a pedestal, and on that pedestal was an object that sent a chill through Ryan's spine. A small, glowing cube. The cube seemed to pulse with energy, its surface shifting and changing shape as though it were alive. "What is that?" Lieutenant Ava asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "It looks like some sort of artifact," Ryan answered, stepping closer. He reached out to touch it, but before his fingers could make contact, the room began to shake. The walls trembled, and a low, humming sound filled the chamber, vibrating through the floor and into their bones. A voice echoed through the room, an ancient voice, deep and resonant. "You have come for the truth," it said, its tone both welcoming and ominous. "But the truth comes with a cost." Ryan's heart raced as the voice continued, its words echoing through his mind. "The galaxy you know is not what it seems. You are not the first to conquer the stars. You are not the first to call yourselves the rulers of the universe. Everything you know, everything you've believed, is a lie." The room fell silent as Ryan processed the words. A lie. What did that mean? His mind raced as he tried to understand. The ancient humans had built this place. They had left it behind, hidden from the galaxy for centuries. And now, it was speaking to him, offering the truth. The cube on the pedestal began to glow brighter, its energy intensifying. And then suddenly, everything went dark. The next thing Ryan knew, he was back on the Nebula Voyager, sitting in the command chair, staring at a blank screen. The crew was still there, but everything felt wrong. They hadn't left the planet, hadn't escaped the chamber. Yet they were back on the ship, as if nothing had happened. The memories of the planet, the chamber, the voice, they were all fading, slipping away like water through his fingers. "Captain," Ava's voice broke through his thoughts. "What just happened? Where are we?" Ryan looked at her, and then at the rest of the crew. They were all as confused as he was. Had they imagined it all? Had the planet somehow erased their memories? Or had the truth been too much for them to handle? The voice in his mind whispered once more, "You have touched the truth, Captain. Now you must live with it." The truth that had changed everything. The galaxy they knew was built on lies, and the ancient civilization had known it all along. What would they do with this knowledge? And who else had uncovered the truth before them? Ryan stood, his mind racing with questions. But one thing was certain: the journey had only just begun.